What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Sports Talk. As always, this is Nicolo Manzo coming to you guys with the latest going on in the sports world. Now, so what are we going to talk about today? Well, today we are going to focus on what is probably the biggest story coming out of the sports world over the past week or so, and that is the whole FBI college basketball probe that's going on right now. And of course, the timing couldn't be better, maybe worse for the NCAA. With March Madness here and the ACC tournament and the Big Ten tournament was just this past weekend and everything going on. So probably not the best timing as far as PR goes for them, but it's definitely in the news and it makes it all that more of a story. So if you think back now to last semester, if you listen to the show, you'd know that our first topic for this podcast was my opinion that it was time to pay Division I college athletes. And I laid out my plan in the podcast. You can go check that out if you want to find out more about what I said in terms of what we need to do about that. But, it's kind of coming full circle again, because this is what happens. This idea of recruiting violations and all this stuff, or endorsement violations or what have you, always kind of rears its ugly head every once in a while, and it's happening all over again. So it's kind of coming full circle. I'll touch on what's going on right now, and then I'll kind of bring it back to what we talked about last semester and explain why and what I think we need to do moving forward. Alright, so for those of us out there that don't know exactly what has happened so far, and I should preface this by saying, by the time you're listening to this could be old news, because it seems like this story is putting out new events every 5 minutes. You turn around and there's a new development, there's real news, then there's a story that turns out to not be so true coming out and everything. So right now, where we sit, is that Yahoo Sports obtained some federal documents, some expense reports, and stuff like that from ASM Sports, an agency that is run by former NBA agent Andy Miller and his former associate Christian Dawkins. Now, in that report, there were cash advances and travel and entertainment expenses for Division I college athletes in the effort to get them to sign on with their agency and what have you. So some big names were mentioned in those documents, and a couple of those big names were Michigan State's Miles Bridges, Alabama's Colin Sexton, and Duke's Wendell Carter. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that the universities are directly tied into this yet, because there's no proof of that. Right now, all we have is that the athletes allegedly took money from this agency, and the agency gave them money, so that's all we have right now. But there were plenty of schools, actually listed plenty of big-name schools: Duke, North Carolina, Texas, Kentucky, Michigan State, USC, Alabama, and plenty more. So here's where we're at right now with this whole scandal. All right. So first we have to ask ourselves a few questions about this. First of all, let's ask, how much do you care about this? That's the first thing. Is it an egregious thing? Is it just something that you don't think should be done? Is it just an integrity issue? Where do you really stand on it? Where does the NCAA stand on it? Really, it's out of their hands now. Where does the FBI stand on it? What are they going to do? All right. So here's what I think. Going back to my past podcast, Lonzo Ball said something this week along the lines of, everybody's getting paid anyway, so we might as well pay them. Why not do it legally rather than find out they're getting paid illegally? And I'll tell you what, the guy has a compelling argument. I mean, here's what the story looked like this week. College basketball athletes are being paid to play at Division I schools. Are you kidding me? Are you serious? I mean, come on. We didn't know that was happening already. We've known this has been happening because there's been stuff to prove that it's happened in the past before. I mean, you look at what happened with Louisville in the past. I mean, that was just last year. I mean, and Rick Pitino got fired as a result of it and everything. And we're still hashing things out there. So let's not all act so surprised now, like these kids are being paid. I mean, that's not exactly the surprise of the century here, is it? Now, I agree, it's not the best news or the best thing that could be happening for the sport and through these illegal channels, but let's not act so surprised about it, okay? Let's try to be realistic about it. Now, a lot of these players took money from these agencies who wanted to pay them, and it's wrong because it's illegal, and by the letter of the law, you're not supposed to do that. But the NCAA's response, or there's been reports that they're looking into allowing players to accept endorsement money now and stuff like that. So to me, it almost looks like they're starting to come around to what we suggested last semester, that maybe it is time to start paying these kids. Maybe it's time to start allowing them to make money through legal channels rather than forcing them to illegal channels. To be honest with you, here's where I stand on this issue in terms of, is it a big deal, is it not a big deal? You know what, I'm a guy who likes integrity. I consider myself to be a person of integrity. I think that everyone should do their best to live that way. But in the same respect, I don't view this as a scandal. I mean, I think everyone would agree with this on the level of other major scandals that have been coming out of the sports world lately. I mean, this is a money thing. This isn't sexual abuse or sexual harassment. I mean, that's pretty much where I stand on this right now. It's wrong, sure, but it's not. I don't get as ticked off about it as some other people do. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I can't get there with it. Now, moving forward, there's been some questions raised about how do we handle this? Where do we go with, or how do we fix it? What do we do? Well, there's one suggestion that's been brought up that, I mean, it has to be considered a little bit. Is the NCAA even needed anymore? I mean, should we move forward with the NCAA, or is it time to find somebody else to run things in college sports? Now, obviously, I don't think anybody knows how that would be formed or what kind of process you would have to go through to facilitate that. But let's think about the NCAA and how effective they've been over their run now. So a lot of scandals lately coming out of major schools, and a lot of pay for play scandals, a lot of worse scandals like Penn State scandal, or the Baylor scandal, or recently the Michigan State scandal. So there's plenty of bad things, very egregious, atrocious things coming out of these universities and out of their athletic programs. Not just pay for play. We're talking about sexual abuse here. So let's think about how effective the NCAA has been in enforcing their own rules. It doesn't seem like anybody wants to listen to them. Does anybody care what they even have to say? To me, it seems like nobody cares. So if they're a lame duck administrator here, then maybe it's time we make a change. Maybe it's time somebody comes in there that really means business. Or that's going to, at least they're going to be respected some more. I mean, really. Now, I think that another thing the NCAA has to think about, or because, I mean, they're not gone yet. So the other thing they have to think about is when the FBI goes to punish these players, because really they don't have a say in it, I don't think, because the FBI is going to present findings, and if they find criminal charges and stuff like that, then that's up to them. But in terms of eligibility issues where the NCAA comes in, is they're going to have a hard time probably. I mean, you heard those laundry list of schools I rattled off before. Now picture an NCAA tournament without Kentucky's best players, or maybe without Kentucky at all because they violated the rules, without Duke, without North Carolina, without some of the other schools, Michigan State. I mean, half of your field is going to be gone. I mean, half of your major players are going to be out of that tournament. So that's something they got to think about moving forward. Could they even afford to do that? I don't know. This is going to be a tricky situation, especially the way Louisville was just handled too. Louisville was forced to vacate their title. So if it comes out that these other schools had players that were ineligible, or that they were paid to play for those schools, then I guess we have to treat them the same way because the president was sent with Louisville. Now, moving forward, to circle back to what I said last semester, I truly believe a lot of these problems could be sorted out and solved if you allowed these players to profit off of their name. I'll say what I said last semester. It's a little crazy that we don't allow these people to do this. I mean, in the case of basketball, the NBA makes it so now you can't go right from high school to the NBA. So if you think you're good enough to make it in the NBA, well, too bad. You got to go to college and not get paid. And really, everybody's right on all the TV shows, on radio, and everywhere that's been saying the NCAA with the hypocrisy of amateurism, which I talked about that in the podcast too. It's ridiculous. We have to stop with this. But you're handcuffed as a basketball player especially. You can't go to make money in the NBA when you're ready. A lot of these players could be ready now, and they have to spend a year in college, so you can't make money in college doing that. You can't get an endorsement deal. So what happens then? You start turning the money. Hey, when somebody presents you with $1,000, $5,000, whatever it may be, a cash advance on something, because maybe your family's a little bit poor and you need to find a way to help them out, or maybe you don't have anything to eat this week, and maybe you need to do something with that because a scholarship's not going to buy you food. So before we bash these kids for being so immoral and so unjust and so rude and blah, blah, blah. Okay, listen, it's a bad thing they did, I guess. I agree that it could have been handled differently. They should have had a little more integrity, sure, because everybody else in the same boat they're in. But we're not in their situation, everybody. We're just not, you know. So some of them come from not the best situations in terms of finances, and they need to do something about it. So that's something we got to keep in mind here. And I'll tell you what, if you let them make money legally, this would not be a problem. Would not be a problem. Point blank. End of discussion. All right, well, with that said, everybody, on a lighter note, make sure you enjoy March Madness coming up. I know I'm not going to let this put a damper on anything I'm doing because, like I said, you know what? A lot of these guys are being paid anyway, so let's not make it look like it's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like when everybody's doing something, it's almost like the playing field's level anyway. But you know what? With all that aside, I'm sure this will all be hashed out. The people that committed crimes will be taken care of. We're going to clean up basketball to a degree here. Hopefully this will shed some light on things because, believe me, I would like everything to be done legally too. I would. I really would like that. But enjoy March Madness. Root your team on. Fill out your bracket. And I'm sure it will be another great NCAA tournament, as it very rarely disappoints. All right, everybody, thanks for listening to another episode of Sports Talk. Make sure you're liking the Woodward on Facebook, and you can check out our podcasts on YouTube as well. And you can follow us on Twitter also. So you could see plenty of sports talk and on screen with Dylan Wright, and you could get your total fix of the Woodward podcast. I know everybody needs their Woodward podcast, so make sure you are following us and liking us and subscribing and all that good stuff. All right, guys, until next time, enjoy the madness. This is Nicolo Manzo for Sports Talk.